This isn't a schedule. It's a hard reset. Fear is not evidence, and this app shows interference. Neutral exchange center. No more police calls as leverage. Dead.
The judge didn't call it a schedule. She called it a hard reset. And the way she said those words, flat, controlled, final, made the entire courtroom sit up like someone had just unplugged the drama. This court is not going to keep spinning in the same toxic orbit, Judge Amina Hayes said, eyes fixed on the parties. We are going to reset this case the way we reset a system that's been corrupted. Jamal Wright stood at the petitioner's table, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders tight. He was 39, broad-shouldered, quiet on the outside, but his jaw was locked in the way men get when they've been swallowing humiliation for months. Across the aisle, Heather Wright sat beside her attorney, posture perfect, lipstick fresh, eyes already shiny with the kind of tears that arrived on cue. She held a tissue like a prop. Between them was the empty space where their child should have been. 8-year-old Mason was in a side room with the guardian adore, Leetum, coloring quietly under fluorescent lights, while adults argued about whether his father was safe to be near. Heather's attorney finished his argument with a soft, solemn voice. Your Honor, my client is afraid. She has documented concerns. The child has made statements. We are simply asking for protection. Jamal's attorney, Layla Moreno, didn't flinch. She didn't rush. She waited until the courtroom settled into silence. Then she said, Your Honor, may we publish Exhibit 7? Judge Hayes nodded once. On the monitor, a co-parenting app thread appeared. Time-stamped messages lined up like bullets. Jamal. Arrived at exchange location 5:57 p.m. Jamal. I'm here with the booster seat and Mason's backpack. Heather. You're making him anxious. Leave. Jamal. I'm following the court order. Please bring him out. Heather. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Layla clicked again. A second exhibit appeared. A police incident report. A body cam clip. Still frame. Jamal standing under a streetlight in a grocery store parking lot. Hands visible. Calm posture. Heather in the background. Arms crossed. Voice raised. Judge Hayes didn't smile. She didn't sigh. She just watched. Then she looked up at Heather. Ms. Wright, Judge Hayes said, you have used the word unsafe repeatedly. But what I am seeing is repeated interference with exchanges, repeated threats to call police, and a pattern of inflaming conflict in front of a child. Heather's tears spilled. He scares me, she whispered. Judge Hayes didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Fear, she said, is not a substitute for evidence. Heather's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor. No, Judge Hayes said, cutting him off. Sit down. The word landed with weight. Judge Hayes leaned forward. I'm ordering supervised exchanges effective immediately, she said. Neutral exchange center. No curbside handoffs. No parking lot standoffs. No third-party interference. No police calls except an actual emergency. Heather blinked fast, as if she couldn't process the shift. Judge Hayes continued, each sentence a nail. All communication through the court-approved parenting app only. No texting, no social media, no messages through the child. Jamal's throat tightened. And, Judge Hayes said, I am ordering a hard reset plan. She tapped the bench lightly, like she was marking a list. Week 1 through 4. Supervised exchanges and supervised parenting time for Mr. Wright, because Mason's nervous system is now conditioned to conflict. We are not adding chaos to chaos. Heather's attorney started to protest. Judge Hayes held up a hand. Week 5 through 8, step up to unsupervised daytime parenting time if the reunification therapist reports progress. She looked directly at Heather. You will participate in co-parenting counseling and a parental alienation education program, she said. And you will stop using your child as a weapon. Heather's face tightened, anger flashing beneath tears. Judge Hayes didn't blink. If you interfere again, she said, this court will consider sanctions and a custody modification, because the greatest risk I see right now is not Mr. Wright. She paused. It's the ongoing emotional manipulation of a child. The gavel cracked once, and in that sound, the case changed direction. If you're wondering how it got this bad, how a mother can use a child like a shield and a sword, how a father can be forced to prove his love with receipts, how a judge ends up ordering supervised exchanges and a hard reset. You have to rewind, back before the courtroom, back before the app logs, back to the moment the marriage ended and the co-parenting war began. This is a fictionalized composite story inspired by recurring patterns in high-conflict custody cases. Names, locations, and details have been changed to protect privacy. Jamal Wright met Heather Caldwell at a charity 5K on a bright Saturday morning, the kind of event where people wear matching shirts and pretend running is fun. Heather was volunteering at the registration table, laughing with strangers like she'd known them forever. Jamal had shown up to support a friend, and because he liked doing things that felt healthy, even when he didn't feel healthy inside. When Heather handed him his bib number, she smiled and said, "You look like you're here under protest." Jamal laughed. "I am," he admitted. Heather grinned. "Honesty, I like that." They started talking. Heather was quick, energetic, the kind of woman who could fill silence with stories. Jamal was quieter, steady, the kind of man who listened and made people feel heard. They were different in a way that felt exciting. They dated for 2 years. They got married in a small ceremony in a botanical garden, soft light filtering through leaves, everyone smiling like the world was kind. Mason came 2 years later, a little boy with Jamal's deep-set eyes and Heather's dimple when he smiled. For a while, their life looked like a picture. Birthdays, school photos, family trips, Heather posting cheerful captions online, Jamal staying mostly off the grid, proud and private. But the cracks arrived anyway. They always do when two people are stressed and afraid and don't know how to stop hurting each other. Heather wanted control, not in a villain way at first, in an anxious way. She wanted schedules, certainty, clear roles. Jamal worked as a transit supervisor, early mornings, occasional night shifts, responsibility that didn't pause because a family wanted dinner at 6. Heather started saying, Jamal wasn't present. Jamal started saying, Heather, never let anything be good enough. They fought, not about the big thing, about dishes, bedtime, money, tone. Then came the shift that changed everything. Heather started talking about Mason as if he belonged more to her than to them. He needs me, she'd say, when Jamal tried to correct a behavior. You're too harsh, she'd say when Jamal enforced a rule. He's sensitive, she'd say, and Jamal would hear the unspoken part. You're not. Jamal tried therapy, he tried communication books, he tried being softer, quieter, smaller. Nothing worked because the marriage wasn't just strained, it was becoming a contest. And contests don't create peace, they create winners and losers. Heather filed for divorce after a fight that started with a school fundraiser and ended with Mason crying in the hallway. Jamal didn't beg her to stay, he begged for one thing. 50-50, he said. That's all I want. Heather's eyes went cold. We'll see, she said. The temporary custody order was standard, alternating weekends. One midweek dinner. Split, holidays. On paper, it was fair. In real life, paper only works if adults respect it. Heather didn't, not openly at first, quietly, strategically. The first time she interfered, it sounded reasonable. Mason's sick, she texted at 5:58 p.m., 2 minutes before exchange. He's not going, Jamal asked for details. No response. The next time, it was homework. The next time, it was he's overwhelmed. Then Heather started changing the exchange location at the last minute. Meet at the library instead, she'd message. Then, 10 minutes later, actually, we're not coming. He's crying. Jamal kept showing up because he believed the order mattered, because he believed consistency mattered, because he believed his son needed to see him. But every time Jamal showed up, Heather found a way to turn it into a scene. She would arrive late, flustered, voice raised, telling Mason, "It's okay, baby, I'm here." As if Jamal was the threat and she was the rescue. Mason started shrinking at exchanges, not from Jamal, from the tension. He'd grip Heather's hand too hard, eyes scanning Jamal's face, like he was trying to predict whether this would become another loud moment. Jamal tried to kneel down and speak softly. "Hey, buddy," he'd say, "let's go get ice cream." Mason would hesitate, glance at Heather, and Heather would sigh dramatically. "You don't have to go if you don't want to," she'd tell Mason, loud enough for Jamal to hear. "That's how the weapon works. You don't say, 'I'm blocking you.' You say, 'I'm honoring the child's feelings,' and you make sure the child's feelings are shaped by your fear." Jamal didn't want to believe Heather was doing it on purpose. He wanted to believe it was stress, but stress doesn't explain everything. Intent does. The first police call happened in a Target parking lot. Heather insisted exchanges should be public for safety. Jamal agreed because he thought public meant calmer. He was wrong. Public meant witnesses, and witnesses can be used. Jamal arrived early, sat in his car, hands visible on the steering wheel, phone recording the dashboard clock because Layla, his attorney, had told him to document everything. Heather arrived 10 minutes late. Mason was in the back seat, face pressed against the window, eyes wide. Heather stepped out, phone already in her hand. "Stay behind me," she told Mason. Jamal got out slowly, hands open, voice calm. "Hey, Mason," he said. Heather raised her voice instantly. "Don't come near us," she snapped, loud enough for shoppers to glance over. "Back up." Jamal stopped. "I'm here for my parenting time," he said, steady. "I'm not trying to argue." Heather dialed. "Hi," she said into the phone, voice trembling now. "I'm at Target and my ex is being aggressive." Aggressive. Jamal didn't move. He felt the word land on him like a stain. An officer arrived. Heather cried. Jamal stayed calm, and in that moment, the racial layer surfaced without anyone naming it. A white woman's fear. Narrative. A black man's calm being interpreted as suspicious. The officer told Jamal, "Sir, just step back." Jamal did, not because he was guilty, because he knew what escalation could cost him. Heather looked relieved when the officer arrived, like the presence of authority proved her story. Mason watched everything, and that's how the child becomes a weapon twice. First against the other parent, then against the child's own sense of safety. Because what is a child supposed to think when their mother calls police on their father? That father must be dangerous, even if he's standing still, even if he's calm, even if he's the dad who used to build Lego towers and make pancakes. Fear is contagious, especially in kids. After the police incident, Heather filed an emergency motion. She claimed Jamal was intimidating. She claimed Mason was terrified. She asked for supervised visits for the child's protection. The court scheduled a hearing. Heather came in crying, clutching a folder of screenshots, cropped messages, selective clips, a narrative built on fragments. Jamal came in calm, with Layla and a binder of documentation, co-parenting app logs, GPS check-ins, police incident report numbers, and a note from Mason's teacher. "Child appears anxious on exchange days," the teacher wrote. "Reports worry about parents fighting." Not, "Dad is dangerous." Parents are fighting. Jamal thought that would matter. But family court moves cautiously when allegations are made. The judge at the time ordered temporary supervised exchanges until further evaluation. It wasn't a victory for Heather, but she treated it like one. Because the moment a court adds supervision, the narrative of equine danger gets traction, and Heather used that traction like fuel. She told Mason, "The judge said you have to be safe." She told him, "I had to protect you." She told him, "Daddy did this." Mason started refusing to get in Jamal's car. He started saying things that didn't sound like an 8-year-old. "He makes me uncomfortable," Mason whispered once. Uncomfortable. That's adult language. That's coached language. Jamal felt his throat tighten. "Why?" he asked softly. Mason glanced at Heather. Heather's face was sympathetic, but her eyes were sharp. Mason swallowed. "He gets mad," he said. Jamal's chest tightened. "Mad how?" Jamal asked. Mason hesitated. "I don't know," he whispered. "That's the thing about coached fear. It's specific enough to sound real, vague enough to avoid being challenged." Jamal started losing more than parenting time. He started losing his reputation. At school, Heather told, staff Jamal wasn't safe to release to. She emailed the counselor about concerning behavior. She asked the teacher to note any distress. She requested special check-ins for Mason on transition days. To the school, it sounded like a protective mother. To Jamal, it sounded like someone building a paper trail. Layla advised Jamal to stay calm, document everything, and request school records through proper channels. Jamal did. He didn't storm into the school. He didn't confront Heather in public. He didn't give her the reaction she wanted. But inside, he was breaking, because being labeled unsafe as a father isn't just legal. It's spiritual. It's being told your love is suspicious. It's watching your child flinch at your voice because someone else taught them to. One night, after a supervised visit in a community center room, Jamal sat in his car and stared at his hands on the steering wheel. He whispered to himself, "I'm losing. Him. Not physically, emotionally." And that's the theft parental weaponization causes. It doesn't always take the child away, it takes the child's trust. The major twist came from the one place Heather couldn't fully control, Mason's therapist. As part of the supervised plan, the court ordered Mason to see a child therapist for transition stress. Heather thought this would help her, because she believed professionals would validate her narrative. But therapists listen differently. They listen for what a child says and how they say it. After 4 sessions, the therapist wrote a report. Layla obtained it through the Guardian ad litem. The report didn't accuse Heather outright. It didn't use dramatic language. It used something stronger, pattern. Mason demonstrates loyalty conflict, it read. Expresses fear of displeasing mother. Reports being told, Dad is dangerous, without specific memories supporting that belief. Exhibits anxiety associated with parental conflict rather than direct harm. Jamal read those lines and felt his chest tighten, because it was the first time a neutral professional had put words to what he'd been living. Then came the email, the one that detonated the case. A school counselor, Ms. Rowe, had documented a conversation with Heather after Mason cried in class. Heather had written, "Please ask him directly if Dad yelled at him and document it. I need this for court." Need it for court, not need it to help my child. Need it for court. That line was the crack in Heather's mask, because it revealed intent. She wasn't just worried, she was collecting, she was shaping, she was using. Layla filed an emergency motion to modify based on evidence of coaching and interference. Heather responded with outrage. She called it harassment. She called it racism. She called Jamal manipulative. But the documents didn't care what she called it. The documents said what they said. And that brought the case back to Judge Amina Hayes. the judge who ordered the hard reset. After the hard reset order, the court implemented structure like scaffolding around a damaged building, supervised exchange center, neutral staff, security cameras, a parenting coordinator to manage scheduling, reunification therapy sessions between Jamal and Mason to rebuild trust without Heather's voice in the room, and strict rules, no discussing the case with the child, no negative comments about the other parent, no police calls unless there is actual immediate danger, no contacting the school to collect evidence. Heather hated those rules, because rules remove leverage. The first supervised exchange under the new plan happened in a beige building with a reception window and a sign that read, Family Transition Services. Mason arrived holding Heather's hand, shoulders raised like armor. Heather leaned down and whispered something into his ear. The supervisor stepped in. "Ma'am," she said calmly, "no coaching at the door." Heather's face tightened. "I'm just comforting him." The supervisor's voice stayed neutral. "Comfort is welcome," she said. "Instruction is not." Heather swallowed hard, then backed up. Mason looked confused. He glanced between his mother and the supervisor, like he didn't understand why the usual script wasn't working. Then Jamal walked in, not rushing, not begging, just calm. Mason froze, his eyes filled instantly, not with hatred, with conflict, because children can love two parents even when one parent teaches them to fear the other. Jamal knelt down slowly, hands open. "Hey, Mace," he whispered. Mason's lip trembled. Jamal didn't say, "Your mom lied." He didn't say, "I'm right." He said the only thing that matters to a child in a war zone. "You're safe with me," he said, "and you're safe here." Mason didn't move for a second. Then he stepped forward and hugged Jamal quickly, fast, like he was afraid someone would punish him for it. Jamal's throat tightened. He held Mason gently, not too tight, not too long, because the goal wasn't to force closeness. It was to make closeness feel permitted again. Heather watched from across the room, face rigid. The supervisor documented the interaction with calm professionalism, not as drama, as data. And data is how courts build reality when parents can't agree on it. The hard reset plan wasn't magic. The first month was messy. Mason would get quiet after visits, sometimes crying at bedtime. He'd ask Heather, "Are you mad at me?" Heather would tell him, "No, baby," but her tone would carry resentment. He'd ask Jamal, "Are you going to get arrested again?" Jamal's chest would tighten, and he'd answer carefully. "No," he'd say, "and if you ever feel scared, you tell your therapist. Not because you need to protect me, because you deserve to feel safe." That's what reunification therapy did. It gave Mason permission to speak without being recruited into adult narratives. In therapy, Mason admitted something that broke Jamal's heart. "When Mom cries," Mason whispered, "I feel like I have to choose." The therapist nodded gently. "That's a heavy job," she said. Mason's voice shook. "I don't want to pick," he said. Jamal's eyes burned, because no child should have to pick. The therapist wrote progress notes. Mason began to relax in Jamal's presence again, slowly. He started laughing during visits. He started asking Jamal to play basketball again. He started talking about school projects, small things, normal things, the things that get stolen first in a custody war. Heather struggled under the new structure. The parenting coordinator confronted her patterns gently but firmly. "You can't use the school as an evidence factory," the coordinator said. "You can't make your child responsible for your anxiety," Heather snapped. "He is dangerous." The coordinator didn't argue. She asked, "Where is the evidence of danger?" Heather stalled. Because fear is not evidence. Heather was ordered into co-parenting counseling. In one session, she admitted something without realizing what she was admitting. I can't stand how calm he is, she said. It makes him look innocent. The counselor paused. Look innocent, she repeated softly. Heather blinked, then tried to backtrack. But the sentence had already landed, because what Heather was revealing wasn't safety concerns. It was narrative concerns. She didn't just want protection, she wanted to win the story, and she wanted Jamal to wear the villain costume. At the compliance review hearing, Judge Hayes reviewed reports. The exchange center logs showed Jamal arriving on time, consistent. The therapist's notes showed Mason progressing. The parenting coordinator's reports showed Heather had attempted minor interference twice, messaging through Mason, sending reminders about court to his backpack. The judge addressed Heather directly. This is your final warning, Judge Hayes said. Stop recruiting your child. Heather's face tightened. I'm his mother. Judge Hayes nodded. Yes, she said, and a mother's job is to protect her child from harm, including harm you create. The room went quiet. Judge Hayes continued. The hard reset is working because the adults are being contained, she said. You do not get to sabotage it because you miss control. Heather's attorney tried to soften. My client is anxious. Judge Hayes cut him off. Then she should treat her anxiety, she said, not weaponize it. Then the judge shifted her gaze to Jamal. Mr. Wright, she said, you will continue to follow this plan. You will remain calm, and you will understand this. Your son is watching how you handle being wronged. Jamal swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor, he said. Judge Hayes nodded. Good, she said, because the outcome here isn't about winning. It's about giving Mason his childhood back. By month 3, the supervised label was lifted for Jamal's parenting time. Not because Heather allowed it, because professionals documented stability. The step-up plan moved forward. Jamal got unsupervised day visits, then overnights, then a regular schedule, still structured, still monitored through the app, still with supervised exchanges for a while, because the exchanges were the most volatile point. One Saturday morning, Mason sat at Jamal's kitchen table, eating cereal, hoodie too big, hair messy, the kind of normal you don't appreciate until you almost lose it. Mason looked up suddenly and asked, Dad, why did Mum call the police? Jamal's chest tightened. He didn't want to lie. He also didn't want to poison Mason against his mother. So he answered in the only way a father can answer when a child is carrying too much. Because grown-ups get scared and mad, Jamal said gently, and sometimes they make bad choices, but you are not responsible for that. Mason frowned. Was I bad? Jamal's throat tightened. No, he said firmly. You were never bad. You were stuck. Mason stared at his bowl for a moment. Then he whispered, I thought you didn't want me. Jamal felt tears burn behind his eyes. He reached across the table and covered Mason's hand with his own. I always wanted you, he said quietly. Always. Mason's lip trembled. Then why didn't you come? He asked. Jamal swallowed. I did come, he said softly. Every time, even when you couldn't see me. I was there. Mason's eyes widened slightly, as if that sentence rewired. Something. Then he nodded slowly, and in that slow nod was the beginning of trust returning, not as a dramatic moment, but as a quiet correction inside a child's mind. The case ended the way most high-conflict cases should end, not with someone being destroyed, with boundaries being enforced. Heather retained meaningful parenting time, but under strict conditions. Jamal retained shared custody with strong protections against interference. Mason continued therapy. The parenting coordinator stayed involved for 6 months to prevent relapse into chaos. And Judge Hayes issued one final statement at the last review. This court does not expect you to like each other, she said, but I do expect you to stop using your child as a battlefield. She looked at Heather. "You cannot parent through fear," she said, "and you cannot raise a child to distrust half of himself." She looked at Jamal. "You cannot heal this by punishing her," she said. "You heal it by showing your child what steady love looks like." Then she said the line that became the true ending. "Mason is not a weapon," Judge Hayes said. "He is a boy who deserves peace." Gavel. Done. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. When one parent weaponizes a child, the child becomes the casualty long before the court catches up. And when race enters the narrative, when a white parent's fear is treated as automatically credible, and a black parent's calm is treated as suspicious, the stakes become even more dangerous. Because the system can be manipulated by stereotypes. That doesn't mean every allegation is false. It means every allegation must be tested against evidence, receipts, timestamps, third-party documentation, therapy notes, school emails, police reports, things that don't care how persuasive someone is. Judge Hayes ordered supervised exchanges and a hard reset plan because the court finally recognized the real emergency wasn't Jamal's presence. It was the child being trained to fear it. So here's the question to sit with. If a child's behavior changes during custody conflict, if they start speaking like an adult, if they start carrying a parent's emotions like a backpack, who is protecting that child from the adults? Because the hard reset plan wasn't about punishing a mother. It was about saving a child's nervous system from becoming collateral damage. And for Jamal, the victory wasn't winning a legal argument. It was sitting at a kitchen table months later, watching his son laugh at something stupid on TV and realizing, quietly, painfully, gratefully, that normal life is sometimes the greatest outcome a court can give.